Have you ever lost something that felt impossible to replace? Not something small, but something that carried meaning. Time you cannot get back. Opportunities that slipped away. Relationships that broke apart. Dreams that never materialized. Loss has a way of leaving silence in places where hope once lived. You try to move forward, but part of you remains behind, replaying what happened, wondering what could have been different. And sometimes the pain is not only about what you lost, but about the fear that it will never be restored. Many believers struggle with this quiet grief. They trust God, but they question whether restoration is still possible. They believe He heals, but they wonder if what they lost is too far gone. Because loss feels permanent. When something leaves your hands, it feels final. When doors close, they feel sealed. When time passes, it feels unrecoverable. But there is a truth you must hold on to. God is not limited by what you lost. He is not restricted by time. He is not blocked by missed opportunities. He is not defeated by broken situations. God specializes in restoration. Restoration is not just replacement, it is recovery with purpose. When God restores, He does more than give back what was taken. He redeems the time attached to the loss. He heals the pain connected to the experience. He rebuilds what was broken stronger than before. Because divine restoration always carries increase. There are moments where loss happens not because God abandoned you, but because something greater was being prepared. Closed doors redirected you. Broken plans repositioned you. Pain refined you. And while loss felt destructive in the moment, it was developmental in the long term. God wastes nothing in your story. Even painful chapters become material for restoration. Another truth about restoration is that it rarely looks like the original loss. You expect God to return what you lost exactly as it was, but often He restores through different pathways, new opportunities, new relationships, new doors. Because His goal is not just to give back the past, it is to build your future. So restoration may come in forms you did not anticipate. But when it arrives, you realize it carries healing deeper than what was originally lost. As we continue deeper into this teaching, you will begin to understand why God allows loss, how restoration unfolds, and why what He brings back often exceeds what was taken. Because loss is never the final chapter when God is involved. Loss is one of the most difficult experiences for the human heart to process. Because when something leaves your life, whether it is time, opportunity, relationships, health, or dreams, it creates a void that feels impossible to fill. You try to move forward, but the memory of what was lost keeps pulling your mind backward. You ask questions that have no easy answers. Why did this happen? Why did God allow this? Could it have been avoided? Will I ever recover what I lost? These questions are natural in seasons of loss because pain searches for explanation. But one of the deepest truths believers must understand is this: God does not always prevent loss, but He never wastes it. There are times when God allows loss not as punishment, but as redirection. Some things you lost were not meant to carry your destiny forward. They looked important, they felt necessary, but they were not aligned with where your life was truly meant to go. So God allowed separation. He closed doors you would have kept open. He removed people you would have held onto. He ended seasons you would have extended. Not to harm you, but to reposition you. Because destiny cannot unfold correctly while you remain attached to what does not belong in your future. There is also refinement that happens through loss. Loss exposes what you depended on too heavily. It reveals attachments that replaced trust in God. It uncovers areas where your identity became tied to things rather than anchored in Him. And while this exposure feels painful, it produces spiritual strength. God rebuilds your foundation so that your security rests in Him, not in temporary circumstances. Another dimension of loss is preparation. Sometimes God allows something to leave because what is coming requires space. You cannot carry new opportunities while holding onto expired ones. You cannot step into fresh seasons while clinging to old environments. So loss becomes clearing ground for restoration. It removes what would limit what God is about to introduce. There are also situations where loss becomes protection. You may have lost something that looked beneficial, but hidden within it were consequences you could not see. God sees outcomes beyond moments. He may remove you from relationships that would have wounded you deeper, from opportunities that would have trapped you, from environments that would have derailed your purpose. So what felt like loss was actually preservation. Another painful reality about loss is time. Many people grieve years they feel they wasted, opportunities they feel they missed, seasons they believe they can never recover. But God is not limited by lost time. He can compress progress. He can accelerate restoration. He can accomplish in a short season what looked like it required decades. Divine restoration is not bound to human timelines. There are stories of people who lost years but experienced sudden restoration that restored not just what was lost, but multiplied what was possible. Because God redeems time, not just opportunities. There is also emotional healing connected to restoration. Loss does not only affect circumstances, it affects the heart. It creates wounds, fears, insecurities, and hesitation about trusting again. But restoration includes healing. God does not just restore externally, He restores internally. He heals the pain attached to the loss. He rebuilds confidence. He restores peace where grief once lived. Because restored opportunities without healed hearts would still leave you broken. As we move into the next part, we will go deeper into how restoration unfolds, how God rebuilds what was lost, why restoration often exceeds the original loss, and how to remain hopeful even when recovery feels distant. Because loss may be part of your story, but it is never the ending God writes. When you walk through seasons of loss, one of the hardest struggles is believing that restoration is still possible. Because loss has a way of making the future feel smaller. You begin to think in limitations instead of possibilities. You start measuring your life by what is gone rather than what can still come. And slowly, hope weakens. You stop expecting restoration, not because you stopped believing in God, but because pain made you cautious about expecting again. But this is where faith must be rebuilt. Because restoration begins internally before it manifests externally. You must first believe that God can restore what you lost, even when there is no visible evidence yet. Faith creates space for restoration to enter. Without hope, you may not recognize restoration when it begins forming. Without belief, you may resist the very opportunities God is sending to rebuild your life. This is why healing your heart is essential in restoration seasons. Loss often leaves wounds, disappointment, betrayal, regret, fear of trusting again. And if these wounds remain untreated, they can block the restoration you prayed for. You may push away new relationships because of old pain. You may reject new opportunities because of past disappointment. So before God restores externally, He heals internally. He rebuilds your confidence. He restores your peace. He removes the fear attached to your past loss. Because restored blessings require restored hearts. Another truth about restoration is that it often comes gradually before it becomes visible fully. Small signs appear first. New opportunities begin forming. New connections start aligning. New doors open quietly. At first, they may seem unrelated to your loss, but over time, you begin to see how they connect to God rebuilding what was broken. Restoration is often progressive, not instant. God rebuilds piece by piece, ensuring stability rather than temporary replacement. There is also the reality that restoration rarely looks identical to what you lost. You expect God to return the same door, the same person, the same opportunity exactly as it was. But God's restoration is not about recreating the past, it is about building your future. So He may restore through new paths. A different opportunity that leads further than the old one could, a healthier relationship than the one that ended, a greater provision than what was lost. Because divine restoration carries improvement. It does not just give back, it upgrades, strengthens, and expands. Another powerful truth about restoration is that it redeems time. Many people mourn years they feel they wasted, seasons they feel they can never recover. But God has the ability to accelerate progress. He can open doors quickly. He can restore opportunities suddenly. He can accomplish in a short period what looked like it required decades. This is what it means when restoration exceeds loss. You realize that what you lost did not delay your destiny, it redirected and prepared you for something greater. There is also testimony formed in restoration. Your story becomes evidence that loss is not final, that broken seasons can be rebuilt, that pain can be transformed into purpose. Others see your recovery and gain hope for their own healing. Restoration becomes encouragement beyond your personal life. As you begin seeing signs of rebuilding, your faith strengthens again. You trust God deeper than before. You recognize that He did not abandon you in loss. He walked with you through it and is now rebuilding what was taken. And this renewed trust stabilizes your heart for what comes next. As we move into the final part, we will step into the fullness of restoration, how God completes what He begins, why restored lives often shine brighter than before, and how embracing restoration transforms your future beyond what you imagined possible. Because what God restores is never weaker than what was lost, it is stronger. There comes a moment when restoration stops being something you hope for and becomes something you begin to see. At first, it is subtle. A door opens where there was once rejection. Peace enters where pain once lived. Opportunity appears where loss once stood. And slowly, you realize that God has been rebuilding your life all along. Restoration does not always arrive the way you expected it to, but when it comes, it carries evidence that nothing you lost escaped God's attention. Because what He restores is not accidental, it is intentional. When God restores, He does more than return what was taken. He heals what was wounded. He strengthens what was broken. He rebuilds what collapsed. And often, what he restores carries greater depth than what was originally lost. This is the nature of divine restoration. It comes with increase. You may have lost one opportunity, but God opens multiple doors. You may have lost one relationship, but He brings connections healthier and more aligned. You may have lost time, but He accelerates progress beyond what you imagined possible. Restoration multiplies where loss once subtracted. Another realization that comes in restoration seasons is understanding why loss happened at all. You begin to see that some things you grieved were never meant to remain. Some doors you cried over would have limited your future. Some relationships that ended were protecting your destiny. Clarity replaces confusion. You realize that God did not just restore you, He repositioned you. What felt like destruction was redirection. What felt like ending was transition. What felt like abandonment was preparation for rebuilding on stronger foundation. Restoration also brings emotional healing. The wounds you carried begin to close. The fear attached to past pain weakens. Confidence returns. Peace stabilizes your heart again. You no longer react from hurt. You respond from healing. Because God never intended to restore your life externally while leaving your heart internally wounded. He restores both. There is also testimony that emerges from restoration. People who knew your loss witness your rebuilding. They remember when doors closed on you. They saw the pain you walked through. And now they see the restoration God has brought. Your story becomes encouragement for others in broken seasons, proof that loss is not final when God is involved. Restoration turns pain into purpose. Another powerful truth is that what God restores often lasts longer than what was lost. Because it is built on refined character, deeper faith, and spiritual maturity developed through the loss you endured. What you carry now is stronger than what you carried before. And this strength ensures that restoration is sustained, not temporary. As we close this teaching, hold this truth deeply in your heart. Nothing you lost is beyond God's ability to restore. Not your time, not your opportunities, not your peace, not your purpose. He is still rebuilding what you thought was gone forever. So do not let loss convince you that your story is over. God is still writing restoration into your future. If this message has encouraged your heart, strengthened your hope, or reminded you that restoration is still possible, take a moment to support the channel. Like this message, share it with someone who feels like they have lost too much. Leave a comment about what spoke to you most. And subscribe so you don't miss the next teaching that will continue building your faith. And always remember, what you lost is not the end. God will restore it.